Welcome back to the No Boring Stories podcast. I, of course, am Alex Street, and I am joined today by, a fast friend. Look at this. We're going to have a great conversation. We're already laughing. We're talking about our families. It's a quick connection here. We got Lucas Mack on the show. Lucas, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be a guest on this and excited to connect and create something beautiful.
Yes, that's it. I think that's it. We just get to show up. This is what's so fun about this, right? I mean, you're in front of audiences, you're using your voice, you're sharing your message all the time. We'll get into why and exactly how that shows up and how that happens for you. But that's what it's about there. Just as you say, we get to create something here.
Yeah.
That's the most fun of this. It's like, we don't know where this is going to go. Let's just pull out the paintbrushes and start throwing something on a canvas together.
It is so cool. Like, I was sharing that I host a podcast too, and just being able to, some of the people that I have become closest to, or people that I've met on the podcast, and just because there is that vulnerability, you get to hear and you can tell when someone's not, when they're in ego telling the story versus like just that vulnerable space of being who they are. And it's been really fun. So I'm excited to be on with you.
Okay. So let's just play in that a little bit here. Let's just start there. So yeah, you have a podcast. Tell us about that a little bit. And then I just want to ask some behind the scenes questions of like, just exactly what you're touching on there of like the guests and what those conversations look like. I really want to get into it is the selfishness of being a podcast host and what we get to experience through this, and maybe what you have heard, some cool things that you have heard through that. But tell us, what is that? What are you hosting?
The podcast is called The Golden Rule Revolution. And originally their first tagline was, where inspiration and purpose come from treating people like people and nothing less. Not a label, not a title, not a digit, not some marker that is on a spreadsheet somewhere, but a full-fledged human being with a mind, body, soul, spirit, and heart that seeks to be engaged and seeks to be known and loved and heard and affirmed. And it's chronicled really my own journey of healing from massive trauma. And so now I say on the podcast, it's me sharing my journey of healing, so you don't feel alone on your journey. So we're all in this together. And
I think that's it, right? That's you get to show up and you get to share this, and people find themselves in. That's everything that this podcast is. Luke is. Can I call you Luke? I don't know. I didn't even ask you that before. What is it? Lucas? Luke? L-Dog. Here we go. No, that one's off the table. That's it. Is as we share our stories so that others can find themselves in it.
Yeah, that's right.
And then see themselves as, I guess for you it would be then to see themselves as a human. They feel treated like a human because they're finding themselves in your story, if you're in that as well.
Yeah.
So what to come to this selfishness of being a podcast host, you said you find some of your close friends through that because it's a space of vulnerability. What do you look for, or what do you find that you've connected with most with people on the show that you're like, wow, there's something special, like that just broke through, something they just did. You mentioned vulnerability or speaking in ego. What kind of stands out to you as being like, wow, this is a really cool experience. I'm so glad that I get to do this because this person just gave me this gift.
Well, for me, it's been, and eventually we'll share my story, but to give
we'll get in there. I know, just keep teasing it. It's good.
Yeah, we'll tease it out, but like why it matters to me, like what stands out and why. I grew up in a really dogmatic, fundamental religious home with a Irish Catholic Jesuit father and who married a evangelical Jewish woman.
I've heard this joke before. Yeah,
bro, it's been a joke that I've been living my whole life. Only the joke was on me.
Okay,
that was also the punchline. All right, so so growing up in just confusion of religion, and religion brings with it, this is the way, this is the answer, this is put a period after it, no question mark, no comma. And so to answer your question of what I connect with people, and built some really beautiful relationships are people that are seeking beyond the period, beyond the bookend, that there's more to this story, there's more to our existence, there's more to finding out why we are the way we are, what imprints were placed upon us that we keep ignoring as just the way things are or the way we're supposed to be. So I connect with a lot of people that are, I talk about everything, spirituality, politics, religion. I mean, literally everything, just exploring with people. So at the end of the day, I'm not looking for consensus and agreement. I really could care less if we agree. In fact, no one agrees with another person infinitely precise, because if we mapped out all our beliefs, even if we said, oh, I'm a conservative, I'm a liberal, I'm a blah, blah, blah. If we mapped it out, no one believes the same thing.
Yeah.
We just kind of ignore and like, oh, I'm in this camp and you're in this camp. So we don't really believe the same things, but we feel safe when we think we do. And I'm saying we don't need agreement and consensus to love one another, to be in relationship with one another. A rainbow is beautiful because of the colors that arc together in this beautiful journey, not because it's one color. Oh, there's the red in the sky. Who cares? The rainbow is like, man, look at this prism. And I think that's what humanity gets to remember again. So
there's a couple things coming up there. I'm always amazed when you see the sunset. I draw attention mostly. I'm like, when it's not like the, reflecting off the clouds or whatever, it's when you just see that gradient go from like orange up to like dark blue and black on the other side. I'm like, how do all those colors just so flawlessly merge together? And I think that's even this representation as well of what you're saying. Like even in a rainbow, there's this division between the things. And what we're talking about is this like almost like fluid, like connection of like, there was actually, so I used to be a youth pastor and in that space.
I used to be a pastor, ran my own ministry. So we can really jump into some stuff then, man.
Oh gosh, we might. Okay. This is already going to be a part 2 and part 3. And I was just thinking about this today. Like, I was like, where did this come from? It's something that I said in one of my very first sermons that I said, like on the big stage. I could not stand it. You talk about the period at the end or the division that's in place, the walls that we put up, and we say that there's no walls. It's all inclusive, but if you're in the club. So for me, there was always, or this statement that came to mind that I think really shows up here is, it's not about us against them. It's not about even us and them, which sounds inclusive, but it's still creating a them. It's just about us. Like, this is humanity. We are in this. So why divide? Why separate? And I know where this goes, and we can talk about this with all of our privilege and where we sit right here as a couple of white men who live in the societies we're in. But I think that this message is exactly what we need. And so I'm cheering you on. And I love that what you're saying is to find that what you find most fascinating in the conversations that you're having is when you see that somebody, you said, they see beyond the dot. Yeah. They see beyond the pyramid. They're just asking. They're saying, like, is there something bigger than this?
Well, I'm gonna go to a place, because I think you opened the door for it, that might be uncomfortable, maybe not. But I was thinking this past weekend, and I was talking to a friend who is part of leading the DEIB efforts at a big company, nationwide company. And I said, I was thinking about, and DEIB is diversity, equity, inclusion. I don't even know what the B stands for, quite frankly. And B, just B.
Bureau.
Diversity. Bureau.
Like bureau.
Bureau. Like, what does B stand for? But I was thinking, how ironic is it in a day and age where the champion of civil rights said it's not the color of skin, it's the content of character, yet we keep coming back to the color of skin. Like, that's something. Like, at the end of the day, what we're saying is it's the character of the human. It is all us. It is us. It is only us. And there is no, if we grew up in another person's shoes, we'd be no different than them.
Yeah.
And that should bring humility to us, to be grateful for what we have and to listen and to encourage. But the us in this whole story, the humanity, and it is the beauty of humanity, is a theme that I talk about a lot, is we get to choose in every moment whether we will be unconsciously perpetuating the cycles presented to us through childhood, society, culture, family, friends, whatever, or we will be the heroes that say, the pain stops with me. I don't care if you're gay, black, straight, Asian. I don't care what narrative or what title or what label or what external validation that you find in the group. Because this is what I said. We all want to fit in these groups because we feel safe. We kind of like glaze over like, but at the end of the day, the love that comes from our heart, the healing story that we all carry, that's where hope comes from. And this is where I say, joke around. I used to say this was running ministry. Everyone needs a but God. But God. Exactly. I was this, but God. God. And we are missing. And truly, if you think of, I can't think of one celebrity, one presented hero in today's media culture where we know their story arc of they were this, and now they're this. It's all just one thing. It's all glossy. They're all muscle, or they're all beauty, or they're all body, or they're all. But where's the story arc? Where's the
gosh. Oh, you are just talking to my sweetheart right here. This is everything for me, Lucas. This is the transformation story arc. It's what I wake up thinking about. It's what I teach. It's what I coach on. It's the foundation for everything here. It's where we will go through your story here. It's looking at it as an arc. And I think that's so fascinating. You look at Taylor Swift, The Rock, whatever, any of these people, and you're like, no, I see them as who they are now. And even if I think that I can go back, I'm going back maybe to where I was introduced to them.
Right.
But you're right. It's this, but who were they? And we're missing act one. We're missing what happened to them. How did they grow up? What kind of a home were they in? How do they feel loved or not loved? And how did that lead them to this life of entertainment or wherever they are to really, and what's the passion that they really show up with? Because we think that they're here to entertain us and that is it.
Right.
Here we are now, entertain us. Like that's it. But of course, there's a deeper passion there, which is where I start with people, right? So even looking at you and I'm going to ask you, what do you do? We've talked about all this beautiful stuff. I want to hear what you do, because that is the who you are.
Yeah.
And that then gives us, I think all that it is, just what you said there, it's not the end point. That is not the be all and end all of who you are.
Right.
That's the starting point to say, whoa, how did you get here?
Yeah.
And that's what I find so fascinating about all of this. And that's what's possible within every person's story. So,
right.
Oh gosh. Can we just keep talking? Can we just keep doing this?
We certainly can. We certainly can, brother.
What is it that you do? How are you showing up? What's the main work that you're bringing to the world now?
Bro, so I give a keynote talk. I do a lot of things. So, and I will qualify that I do a lot. And I've had many careers. I've been a TV reporter. I'm a journalist by profession early on. Ran my own ministry. Been on staff for churches. Had a band in college. Toured the Pacific Northwest area. But started an ad agency. I left the newsroom at the ABC affiliate in Seattle. Started a creative agency. Still own it. Built it up till 12 full-time employees, and then 2017 made a transition to make it a virtual company. Still have that. I'm a management consultant at Microsoft. I've been consulting at Microsoft for 5 years, at T-Mobile corporate a little bit. But and I'm a creative director. I'm a really good storyteller, creative director, manager of creative design, storyline, because, and I'll talk about, so there's another side of what go for it.
Because here's the thing. This is what I just want to draw attention here. This is what's so fascinating about that. And this is what I find a lot of people do. And I'm kind of in this effort actually to find out, like, what is it that makes us do that? Is it, well, I'll go into it, but I'm like, what do you do now? What's the thing that you're doing now? And to be honest, I think what you gave me there was that you're a creative director. Everything else was, this is where I have been. This is what I did do. You even told me about being in a band in college, but I'm like, my question is what do you do now? And so there's this effort that I think that we have that it's hard for us even to answer that as mere humans, as mere people who aren't necessarily celebrities. It's hard for us to say like, yeah, this is what I do. Just right now, today,
Well,
this is what I do.
Here's why.
Right.
I give this keynote talk because there's 5 questions to make a story: who, what, when, where, why. There's a 6th question that a news director told me my very first assignment in the small market in the middle of nowhere, Washington State, said, you need to answer the so what, because the who, what, when, where, why only matter to you. The so what matters to the audience. So you can talk about a story and never give the so what. No one cares. I was like, okay, valid. People like to throw in how, but how's not necessary to tell a story. How's like the IP. It's like your secret sauce. I don't give you my how. You got to like come on the other side of the paywall or
for
firewall
$22.
Whatever, right? Exactly right. The how. So how's not necessary to tell a story, but you have to tell who, what, when, or why. When we are building a relationship, and every single person on planet Earth has the same psychological buying process. We buy emotionally and we back it up logically. So that's why labels face the aisle and not the ingredients. That's why color and palette and design is so important when it comes to the commerce of today's society. If you just have dull colors, just uninspired, and inspiration is what leads to a transaction. So who, what, when, where only engage the mind. The only question that engages the heart is the question why, which is akin to purpose. So when we meet people, we are conditioned to say, what do you do? But that's not really what we're trying. I don't like actually answering what I do, because in this present moment, I am a creative director. Right. But it's also an because I also podcast host. I'm a published author. I do coaching with people. I also write a lot of music. So I bring all that into what I'm trying to do. What do? I express myself as fully as I can in every application of my life that I can.
Well, see, you're so brilliant at this. And I can you see all of that. You're a great studier of the human mind and how we work, and obviously bringing that into a profession. And I guess my effort with this and it might just be my knobby, unique style that I bring to this is I am so I don't know, I guess it's frustration. I'm so frustrated by seeing so many, let's call it personal brands, people saying all these, like this massive explanation, trying to explain what they do, when really what they're trying to say is what you just said. Like, I'm a creative entrepreneur. You could put a title to it. You could say I'm a creative director and a podcast host and a speaker. You could just start there and say that. And the clarity in that actually is key, I think, to a lot of people truly like getting that first taste, because sometimes people are like, what do you do? They actually just want to know what you do.
Yeah.
And I think at least what I do right here, I love this because you're breaking down like my own process before you even know what it is. This is so good. Because where I would have led this is, what do you do? You tell me what you do. And then I say, okay, what impact does that make? What do you see that doing with the people that interact with you, with the products that you're working with? Like what happens to the people that interact with the work that you create? And then that is what's going to help us launch back to, then I get to ask my why question, because now I actually have something to say why to. Of like, you're going to say, wow, I love it when people feel blank after working with me. I'm going to say, that's the key right there. Where does that begin? And then we'll go back in the story.
Love it.
What do you think about that?
I love that. I think if we all knew that, and I have an answer to that, but I mean, just philosophically speaking to that, if individuals were able to think through that and articulate themselves more clearly, they'd have a greater impact, which is what you're on a mission to create. So I think that's so important. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, this is what I share with people. We all make an impact. Every single person on this planet is making an impact right now. We're either making a more positive or negative impact. We're either inspiring people or uninspiring people. And I wrote in my book, inspired people inspire people, but conversely is true as well. Uninspired people uninspire people. So you have a whole bunch of people like walking around like, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, bro, either there's two. I almost went super intense, but I want to share this. There's two ways that we can be to be molded. We can be iron or we can be clay. Both take two things to mold those: fire and water. Now, if we're going to be iron, to mold iron, you got to dunk it in fire, pull it out, and beat the shit out of it. You gotta beat that, beat that, beat that. And then when you've got it to that place of perfection, you put it in water and it
sticks.
Stays. Right. Or we can be clay and the water comes first. Like just this life massage, I'm applying and kneading and spinning and like, what the heck's going on? But once you got it to that place where it's like, wow, this is perfection, you then put it into the fire and then it sticks. And I think what's going on right now, I hope, is I'm not trying to tell any one person that being iron or clay is better. There's pluses and minuses of both, but you can't avoid the water and you can't avoid the fire if you truly want to be who you're destined to become.
So let's find out about your fire then, or your water, I guess. So let me just zone in on this then. In all of the roles that you are playing, as I just described, I'm going to do. Like, what do you see? What's the biggest hope for you that when somebody comes across your music, your work, your speech, your book, your podcast, if somebody said, because of Lucas's message, I now feel
the love of God, period. And I hate religion and I have left Christianity and I've studied with some of the most influential Hasidic rabbis in this country for 5 years from my Jewish side. I love people. I love God. I think God existed well before the written word, and God will exist well after the written word. And all our institutions and buildings and lights and cameras and harmonies and chord progressions and thoughts and everything that's been uttered and will be uttered, God existed prior, God existed in, and God will exist after. The question is not, what is the love of God? What does that mean? We have to find what that is, because to know love is to reclaim what this word God is, and it's also to reclaim what this word love is. We have been so bastardized by a system of pain and trauma telling us what God is, what love is. I love you, therefore I beat you. I say, oh yeah? Then prove to me you love me as much as I seek to be loved, and beat me to death. Because at the end of the day, I have grown up. I have been the iron. And it wasn't until the past 5 years that I found the water. And I didn't find it in religion. And I've read the Bible 7 times, cover to cover, the King James Bible. I didn't miss a morning and night praying on my knees. I fasted from Sunday night to Tuesday morning for 5 years straight. I have read all Spurgeon's work and Wesley's work and Leonard Ravenhill's work and A.W. Tozer's books. And I can give you a dissertation on the classics. I can tell you about the Jewish Safers and I earnestly sought it with every freaking fiber of my being to find truth, to find love, to find clarity, to find who is God? What is this thing? And what I've learned is this, brother, and I share this in my TED talk that I gave. Where love is present, real love, truth will come forth, resulting in our personal freedom. We're not free because truth isn't allowed to be in that presence, because we don't know love. Because everyone wants to judge. You said it, us versus them, we, the me. Even you said white guys are privileged. Like, well, all of a sudden you separated me and like every other darker skinned person. Like, bro, like there's black people living in the ghetto that haven't been raped. So what is the point of talking about the external stuff? It's about the internal soul that we all want to like. And you know what's cool, bro? I just have to say one thing, and I don't want to hijack this.
No, I love this.
The word neshama in Hebrew is the word for soul. The word soul in Hebrew is neshama, which also means breath.
Yeah.
So how do we know if something's true? If we can breathe more deeply. How do we know if something's a lie? If it constricts our breathing, if it brings fear, if it brings control, And I am, so you said I am on a mission to every single encounter. I say the love of God. What I mean is that they be in the infinite and unconditional presence of love so that they feel safe enough to share their truth and once and for all finally be free.
Gosh,
That's it. No religion, no bending the knee, no saying a prayer, no Romans roadmap, no, if you believe these things, no doctrine of denominational devils. I'm so sick of this. And which devil means DEVIL, which is inversion of LIVED. Evil is the inversion of live. And so all this inverted truths have been presented to us as truths, and mankind is suffering at the helm of lies instead of truth. And what is truth? You can be particular or you can be universal. But what we know truth is by the byproduct. Either we are made free or we are kept enslaved.
You know what? Just, I had no idea, honestly, that we would be this similar, I guess, in thought and experience, at least around this this place, and where our stories collide at this point. And there's something really interesting about that, just about this idea of it's love beyond title, it's
Yes.
love beyond definition, and yet there's something that we know innately within us that draws us to something, to this discovery. And I think that is, for that to be this current page of your story, you know, we get up to this page and we say, you know, ... and before that is, and Luke was helping people find love. Like that, if that's where we are, then you've got to say, imagine picking up that book and reading that, then you got to go, holy crap, how, what, where did that begin? And so all of this, as you're telling me, you know, we started out saying like, yeah, no, I just want to break down divisions. And then you get into this, you're like, no, these are the divisions that I'm talking about. Right? These are the walls that we have built up for centuries and centuries with institutions and everything. And there's this mission not necessarily to tear stuff down, but to build individuals up.
Yes. That's a great way to say it. Yeah.
And I think that is where you and I meet, at least in this, and this is again, it was already a joy, and then you find this solidarity. You're like, ooh,
that's what I mean.
Okay.
I find my friends in podcasting.
I know. I see some.
Awesome.
It's a beautiful journey of deconstruction here. There's some deconstruction through. I deconstructed out of my faith mostly while I was getting my master's in theological studies. So, it is the journey, and it's all good. So
it is all good.
So I didn't know where this was going to go. But now it seems like we've left the shorter part of this podcast to dive in and go through how did you get here, which I think is okay. Again, it's not always, it's whether it's throwing a curveball at you or what, but it's saying, you've given us so much about who you are and why you're here, what your mission is. And I think that all that's done is open up a story loop that we're asking now, okay, give us more, give us the journey to get here. Instead of just being that celebrity figure that shows us who you are now, give us the backstory. How in the world do you get to this point where your singular mission right now is to help people come more alive, to feel that love and experience that truly for themselves? Where does that idea of love begin for you?
Well, so I was severely abused growing up, physically, sexually, verbally, psychologically, spiritually. In fact, when I was 17 years old, and someday I'll be able to come out with more of my story. For safety reasons, I don't share all of the story. But at 17 years old, one night my dad pulls into it. I just had about to drop off a girl I was dating. We went to Red Robin after a high school football game, and I pull into the driveway. No cell phones. I mean, back when I was 17,
Oh,
it was like the brick phone,
yeah.
whatever. It was like Saved by the Bell.
I got a
Brick
pager
phone.
when I was 20. That was cool.
Bro, yeah, exactly right. And pull into the driveway, and all of a sudden this car comes right behind with its brights on, like speeds right up, and I'm like, what the hell? What's going on? And I look, I'm like, I think that's my dad. Now, I didn't tell anyone who I was with. No one knew. I mean, it was just some random date that I was on a Friday night after a high school football game. And I get out of my car and I go up. I'm like, Dad. And he's like, get home now. And I was like, okay. I was like, and I was embarrassed. I was like, oh, sorry. My dad's here. I got to go. So he didn't say anything to me. I go upstairs. I go to sleep. And this is like, I'm telling you, like 1/100th of a data point of my entire life. But I want to talk about the spiritual abuse. The next morning, I was like, how did he know where I was? I mean, literally, I could have been anywhere. I just happened to be in this pull up in the driveway and he pulled up. And I said, how'd you know where I was? And he goes, God told me. And I believed him. I really, truly believed him that God told him. Now, in hindsight, the girl I was dating goes to church. It's all connected to this network that I grew up in this insanity. I grew up in insanity. I didn't grow up in just a man that abused me. I grew up with a family that my dad belongs to a greater thing that brought confusion in my life of who he was and what he was, because on the outside, he's revered. People love him, charming, handsome. People think he's the greatest guy in the world, but behind closed doors with not just me, but many people, this is not about him, but this is also about him because he happened to be the man that sired me through the womb. And here I am living from this. And I want to say it like that because I really refer to him as his name, even though I won't say his name. I don't call him dad because that was not a father. But
who were you? Like, there's this like there's all kinds of moments. Who and there's all these you're just touching on it, right? Just saying this is who I was severely abused by here and here and in this way and in this way and this way. Who were you? Like, what did you love? Like, were you athletic? Were you artistic? Like, what did you love to do? What would you do to like either calm your mind, to find joy amongst by yourself with your friends? Like, what was the thing that like, ooh, this lights me up. This would be my desire.
Well, I was definitely a musician. I wrote my first song when I was 7 years old. I can still play it to this day. I've written thousands and thousands.
I did too. It's just terrible. It's pots and pans.
Oh, man. Oh man. Yeah. I was a musician. I've always been creative. My mom's an artist. My dad's he's a Hall of Fame football coach, high school football coach. And so athletics was everything was athletics and never enough and all this stuff. And I'm not even in the victim of like, oh, my dad was like hard on me. I'm talking about real abuse. I'm talking about like beatings and rapings and horrible stuff. And having the pressure of keeping a facade and a veneer of a smile and that everything's okay, because if you don't keep the smile and the veneer up, it's only worse. And so people would say, like, I got voted best personality in high school my senior year. The next year I had anorexia, and a few years out or a year after that, at the age of 20, I tried to kill myself. So it's like people are like, well, I didn't know, you seemed like so happy. And like, bro, or sis or whoever, like that's how people survive. I didn't turn to drugs. I turned to self-hatred. I turned to wanting to kill myself, which religion fed that really easily. Like, die to the flesh, whoever will lose his life for my sake in the gospel, Sam will like, well, I better just die. I'm evil. Like I have, all this stuff. And so who was I? I was a sensitive child in a world where no sensitivity was allowed. No crying was allowed. I'd be hurt and punished if I cried. I'd have to stand. I just had this memory the other day. I'm just going to tell you a real story of my kids. And there was a moment where my wife and I were frustrated with our three oldest. We just had a newborn. It was kind of chaos. And then send the kids upstairs to calm down. And I'm like, you know what? I want to bring everyone back down. Like, we need to just talk. And I want them to know they're loved and, the chaos and the yelling. Like, So we had this beautiful moment of reconciliation. I was able to say, like, this is what being a father is like, them going to bed knowing they're loved and safe and free. And I shared this story. I said, I don't even know, I haven't thought of this in 20 years, 25 years. But when I was young, I was forced, when I wasn't hit or worse, I was forced to stand in a corner with my nose in the corner when people came, like shaming me. I would have to,
Huh.
like, people would come in our house and I'd have to stand. And I laugh now because it's so
Yeah.
ridiculous to think about it, but just shaming, shaming. When I got, and I don't use the word spank anymore in my TED talk. I'm very specific about, it's not called spanking, is a term that they used to make horses run faster in the 1600s. It's so
Yeah.
insane that we say spank a child, and what we're really saying is hit a child, because spank a child seems nicer than say hit a child. And then
Yeah.
but I would have to have pull my pants down. I have to be naked. I'd have to bend over. It wasn't with a hand. It was with belts, and it was with a bullwhip, and it was always shaming, just shame, shame, shame. But then in the public persona, so I'm giving you a real answer, and I don't know if I've ever shared it like this. The real answer is like, I was a sensitive soul wanting to be loved in a house that shamed me for my sensitivity and made me live a hard exterior presentation of the world, which wasn't me.
So this is it. I mean, you what you're doing here, what you exactly just shared is the peace that people are going to find themselves in as you say that.
Mhm.
Have we, is there anyone listening that has experienced a morsel of what you experienced? I don't know. Is there somebody who's experienced more than you? Maybe.
Yeah.
For you to speak of it in that way and say, this is who I was. And I think that's the piece that we sometimes miss, is we go straight to the darkness. We go straight to the pain, that because we remember pain, we remember negativity right off the bat pretty easily.
Mm.
So to draw to this, yeah, but like, who were you as a person? What did you want? We could talk about Harry Potter and the fact that he was abused and he was like locked in this closet under the stairs, and that's terrible. But he as a person desperately wanted to belong.
Yes.
That's the journey.
Yes.
And so for you, you're like, I knew I needed love.
Mhm.
I was sensitive and I needed to be loved. I needed to be hugged. I needed to be adored.
Mhm.
And what I got created a barrier
Mhm.
from me getting that. And that, like that, right? So now we're like, wow, all right, here we go.
Mhm.
Now you get into, that's why, I mean, of course, it's traumatic. Of course, it's going to form and make you think and believe things about yourself.
Mhm.
But it's like this added thing of like, yeah, we know what you want, and now you can't get to it.
Mhm. Mhm. Exactly.
So how? That's where you get into, okay, yeah. So you're setting the table here for us. This is who you are, and this is the kind of environment that you're in, and you have to show up as this hard nosed, I can do anything, I'm the best personality.
Mhm. Mhm.
Can you talk to that actually just for a second? Like, what is like the ability to put on a face, to put on an act?
Mhm. Well, I
That's not
talk.
unique to you. That's what we all do.
Yeah, yeah, I do. I talk about it now. Is that we all of us, our ego is not our ego is neutral, I believe, in that when we live in ego in the fear-based perspective, that's where it takes us down a path of trauma and fear and cycles that we don't break. But ego also is like how you show up to me and I show up. Like, it's
Yeah.
also the container at which our soul can experience the world. Like, we are essentially one. God breathed into man and man became a living soul. So that breath, the neshama within man, is all one breath.
Mhm.
Yet you have your container and I have my container, and together we get to remember, oh, our source is the same, but hey, how's your experience going? um
Ooh, ooh, oh,
so
ooh. Wait, that's good. So, shoot. How is your experience going?
yeah,
We are one. What's your experience like?
that's it.
Oh,
That's everything. What I yeah, bro. That's why we
something
have
just
to
hit.
leave these. That's why we have to leave these degrees and doctrines, and it's all a lie. We are all one source having different experiences in this. And I don't care how new age to the Christian world that sounds.
Yeah.
It is the truth. We
Yeah.
are all neshamas in containers experiencing this reality, and we get to say, how's your experience going, and listen.
I love that.
Oh, that's everything. So
I just love that. I just got this picture of like we're on a cruise ship and like you go, you go into your own room and then you come out. You're like, hey, how was your night? Well, how's your night? Well, the rooms look even the same, but you had a different experience, and that's why me and my wife, we've been married 16 years. We still go on dates and have stuff to talk about because we're experiencing different things, and I just think that is such a beautiful question and way to look at this. Is just, how's your experience? Whew. I like that. I don't know if you can notice.
Well, A.W. Tozer has a quote.
Oh, we bringing some Tozer into this.
Oh yeah, brother. But it's such a great quote. He said, "A man with an experience is never at the mercy of a man with an argument." And that is for me, that is everything. Is that my experience, our firsthand experience, is the only thing that we know is real. Everything else is conjecture and passed on through the telephone game. It's like, well, I can accept that conceptually this happened, but if I didn't experience it myself, I can't with 100% volition say this happened. Yes. Whether I saw the whole context of 360 degrees, even my own 1 degree of experience of that moment, I can validate as I know firsthand. Mm-hmm. No one can ever say that didn't happen. Only the narcissist says that didn't happen. That's why gaslighting is such a effective form when if we're not grounded in who we are. And this is why trauma is so effective in making people bifurcate their realities, because it's like, wait, did that happen? It seems so shadowy. And for a long time, I was living in those shadows, like, what happened? And so our experience is everything. So I just give a context of why I think that's such an important question to ask. But the mask. The mask.
Yeah. It was this idea of you get to put on something, and then we'll come to kind of a turning point, a shift. How did you shift? But I think that's so important, just to talk about how easy that is to, or even how unknowingly we're wearing a mask and becoming the best personality.
Yeah. So we all wear masks. So that's what I'm saying. Masks are not necessarily bad. However, when we believe we are our mask, that is the danger, because there's no separation. There's no ability to take it off and reveal who we are. Like if I'm going to go with a new client, I'm going to put a mask on. The mask is, I'm not vulnerable, but the mask is, I'm expert. This is my mask that I'm putting on. I'm the expert in this moment, and we're going to go through this. Okay. I'm not like, hey, let me hold you. Like that's not appropriate, right? So a mask is not a bad thing. But when we cannot detach from when we can't see our identity except through the mask, that is where the pain and trauma comes in. And the narcissist sociopath, which I have much experience, believes they are their mask. So they can never not keep that going. That's why that's why a lot of sociopaths and narcissists have manic tendencies, because they always have to, it has to stay going nonstop.
Control your environment.
Mask, exactly right. So they become control freaks, all these things. Mm-hmm. However, we put masks on to survive. That's what we learn. We learn very early. The teacher, the mask of raising your hand, that's a mask. The mask of don't speak when you want to speak. The mask of I will call on you to utter your voice. Now we came into this world screaming like just screaming until we got what we wanted. That's the natural course. A human utters their voice until they receive what they want. And then they meet everyone's trauma and all the institutional whatever. And they say, do not utter your voice. Stay silent until we call on you. So most people are still waiting for someone to save them. Religion says, here's the savior spiritually. Philosophy says, here's the savior in the institution. Whatever the savior is, it's always an external, and people are always seeking it. And I'm here to say there is no one coming to save anyone. The savior is yourself, and it is you detaching from that mask and saying, like, I help a lot of men. I do a lot of men's coaching, and I say, open your jaw right now. Just, and like that softness, to bring softness back into your jaw. You don't have to be this like tight jawed. I know, like, let's go, like, just to soften that. That helps them for a moment. Just, oh, that is a mask I wear. Yeah, it feels better to have a soft jaw. I don't have to be hard. I don't have to be the tough guy, strong guy, whatever.
Yeah.
Guy or gal.
I
don't know
it's so brilliant. It's so good. Well, no, it's of course.
Yeah.
You managed to put on this masks to survive. And I think that's to my question was, how are we doing that? How are we doing that so easily, or again, unknowingly? And for you, you're saying this is what we've been taught. This is what we do. We learn to put on whatever mask we need for whatever situation we're in to survive through that.
And we get rewarded from our mask. You raise your hand when the teacher says you're a good student. All of a sudden you're like, oh, this is the right mask to put on in this scenario.
Well, I mean, even beyond that, it's your personality. And this is I love the way that the Enneagram frames this, is that it's a persona. It's it is a personality. It's a mask that you put on. I am not a 7, but I show myself as an Enneagram 7. That is how I present myself to the world. But I am actually all 9 parts. For the Enneagram nerds out there. I am all 9 of these, but I show up wearing the 7 mask most of all.
Yeah.
And that is what we're doing. We are a whole person, but we have chosen or being nurtured to choose a certain way to present ourselves because we think that's going to reward us the most. And so as let's bring this in. Let's close this loop, I guess. You've got this incredibly formative childhood, teenage years into your young adult years. And then you said something about, it's up until 5 years ago, you carried a lot of this with you and released it. What's that turning point? What's that hinge moment? What's that climax? Just bring us into, what's the moment there?
Yeah. So after I attempted suicide at the age of 20 and did not die that night, literally, I never looked back. I never thought before that moment. I stopped. I closed that door. I would tell people I had a born again experience, that I really was born again in that moment. I didn't think back. And even when I met my wife, I was 20. We got married. I was a month before I was 25. She was 22. We got married young. She would ask about my childhood and I would just gloss over it or blaze, just like kind of like the Jedi mind trick. Like, these are not the droids you're looking for. It's kind of like, I had a really tough, I'd say I had a really rough childhood. That's all I'd say.
Right.
And this happens, and it happens to a lot of people. So I want to share this chronologically. Then I become a TV reporter and I move markets, and she moves with me. She was a TV also. So career became like, it was just another achieving thing. It was like, go to this small market, and then I go to San Antonio, Texas, and that's a big market. And then we come back to Seattle, and this is a bigger market. And I was still trying to do anything I could. And when I was on TV, I got accolades from the family.
Sure.
So then all of a sudden that was like, well, I got to keep going. And then 2008 happened, and they made cutbacks at the TV station. So I had this idea to start a company, a creative agency, advertising agency. And I threw everything. And sadly, I had the narcissistic tendencies. I think, well, I did have those tendencies. And my identity became inseparable from that company and that work. And I remember 3 years into it, I was starting like this other project, and I called my dad. I'm like, Dad, I'm doing this. My dad said, what do you think? You're better than me? And I hung up and I started bawling because to understand, I'm not trying to make this bigger than it is, but also like the pain and agony. Like, what do you mean? Am I better than, what are you talking about? Like, I just want you to just say, not even say you're proud of me, because that's bullshit too. I just want to feel your humanness and to say good job or well done. I don't think God said, this is a funny thing about the Bible. There's a story like, when that day, you'll hear, well done, thou good and faithful servant. He doesn't say, I'm proud of you.
Yep.
Who gives a shit about if you're proud of me or not? Like, did I do a good job? I'm not talking about you. It's not about your pride for me. It's, did I do a good job? Am I good? Can you see me? Am I known? Like, so this is like another point where I'm all of a sudden I'm an employer, even though I was still a kid in a, 36-year-old bar or 28-year-old by at the time, whatever. But, and I just kept going. And first kid, and this is where it gets like very important to understand. Like, I'm my first child and I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to be a dad.
Yeah.
And my wife would be like, don't you want to be home? Like, don't you want to be here? And I'm like, and like in my mind, I knew, yes, like that's the right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't know how truly.
It's never
Like I
modeled
was
for
dumb.
you.
I'm a very smart, I know I'm very smart. And yet I felt like an absolute invalid dummy. I couldn't figure it out. So then I just worked more. And then we had our second child. My body started getting sick. And I started going into anaphylactic shock at random times. And like I was collapsing. I went to the ER and an ambulance twice and I couldn't figure it out. And then I started drinking like a fish. And then I had an emotional affair with one of my employees, and I finally tell my wife, and we had our third baby a month in, and I'm like, I had an inappropriate relationship. Thank God it was never beyond that, but it was enough where I knew I was stuck. And I had just ironically finished the Bible for the 7th time. I never missed a night. And this is like a real important because the Bible, religion, Christianity, it's like I can't describe to you. Like my parents were Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. My dad's is like, I have 38 first cousins on one side. They're all Catholic, hardcore, like militant. And then on this other side, this evangelical, like prosperity.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm like, what is going on? So like religion is so ingrained in part of my story. So
Yeah.
when I finished reading the Bible and I'm like, I got angry at God. I'm like, fuck you, God. Like, I already know all this. I can quote the Bible almost verbatim. I am so sick of it. Like I'm still struggling. I hated myself. I was still suicidal. And then I know that I'm causing this pain with my wife, 3 kids, and I hadn't been able to bathe one of them. I'm 4 years out of 4, 2, and a brand new baby. And I never bathed one of my kids. I couldn't even be around them. I could barely change a diaper. So again, the public face. I'm a published author. I'm a keynote speaker. I'm a creator. I'm one of the fastest growing companies in the state of Washington. I'm a husband. My wife is beautiful. I have these beautiful children, but in the silence of my own mind, I was in hell, like true darkness in hell. And so I started going to therapy every single week. I never missed a week, sometimes twice a week for 2 years. And it was then that I learned, and I had a stigma against therapy. Like, in fact, I had a Christian pastor friend of mine say, make sure you go to a Christian therapist because those secular therapists will get in your mind. And I'm like, I'm so sick of all this shit. Like, maybe they should get in my mind. Like, I'm so tired of hedging in fear. Like, stop this fear-based narrative and rhetoric and all this stuff. But I say in therapy is the very first time, and I want to answer your story, but I can't just get to this end because I got to walk you through, like, I want to walk people through how I got to this place. And I could almost cry, like, when I told my wife that I had an inappropriate relationship, I called my parents like a kid, confessing to them. And I said, I had an inappropriate relationship. That's all I said is I had an inappropriate relationship with an employee. And my mom's like, okay. And my dad's like, I would never do that to your mother. And by the way, just in context, my mom got the gun out of the house because she was afraid he was going to kill her. I had to like sleep with my mom in a bed to keep her safe one night. Like my childhood was not just me; it was hell and chaos. Okay, so when he says I would never do that to your mother, and how he said it, and I was in that brokenness, all of a sudden I was like, it was like seriously Star Wars when they go into hyperdrive and the stars go, and I get chills in the back of my head. Like I started having like I didn't know what they were, but all of a sudden I hung up and I'm bawling. My wife's like, what is going on? And I start losing reality. And I was back first person in this abuse.
Wow.
First person. I had been a third person observer my whole life. I floated above my body. I can tell you how I looked when I got beat with a bullwhip in the garage. I was floating above my body. I saw everything as a third person, and all of a sudden it was like my mind integrated and went whoosh, and I was back first person, and I started break. So I go to therapy, and the therapist's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "I don't know. Like, I'm really broken." And
You're not ready for this.
Bro, he was not ready. He worked. He just retired 30 years. He goes, "Dude, I've never heard a more intense story." I was like, "Sorry, man." But
That's
it was
good.
cool.
Do you
He
get a
was the
plaque for
first
that or
man-
something?
Bro, I should give him something.
Yeah.
I'd never been around a man because men were not safe.
Mhm.
And he was the first man that was gentle and kind to me and list, even though his therapists are paid,
Sure.
he's still a human, and he listened and connected. And I learned to be a healthy father. I learned what a healthy father was. And like, yeah, so I learned to be a healthy father. And but I was still kind of in this loop where I was learning how to be healthy. I was learning what health was, but I still couldn't bathe my kids, still couldn't be around them. So about a year and a half into therapy, my buddy is a Navy SEAL and a really hard exterior, hard persona, beautiful, beautiful man, but really hard. And he and I connected on that hardness. Like, I joke around, like, I want to headbutt you with so much love right now. And he'd be like, yeah, and I want to beat you with love and kindness. No, but in that ego, he was, we connected on that. But he called me one night, and my wife was out of town. My 3 kids are sleeping, and I'm laying on the couch downstairs and still struggling with suicidal tendencies. And I'm laying there, and that's too much of a platitude. I still had a desire to kill myself. And I'm laying there wrestling with this, like, I don't want to do that to them. I've already caused enough pain in my wife's life. I felt like I've caused this wake of destruction wherever I've gone, and I've wanted to do right, and I've done wrong, and I don't know, and I'm still struggling. And he called me on a Friday night. He's like, "Hey," and I'm like, he sounded different, and he invited me. This is how I met Jay Kaufman. He invited me. He told me about this emotional intelligence training that he's at, and he thought about me. And my first thought, now I tried therapy. I've read the Bible. I've got all religions, everything. And my first thought was, is it a cult? And I'm like, how funny that even in my pain, I still defaulted to hedging and trying to protect, and it makes sense. I don't want to get hurt again, but also it's like judgment and kept me from truth.
Yeah.
So I eventually went to this thing. And for the very first time in my life, brother, I mean, I grew up in a big 4-square church, Assemblies of God. I've been in independent Baptist churches. I've done it all. I have never in my entire life ever experienced unconditional love like I experienced at this thing. And it wasn't religion. It wasn't it didn't want anything from me. They literally, there's nothing. It's not a cult. There's no following. It's just come heal, come utter the most painful things that have ever happened to you and heal. And I experienced for the very first time in my life, when I said, like, I thought my suicide attempt was a born again experience, I truly had a born again experience because I uttered the one thing that I had never uttered out of my mouth ever one time. And as soon as I did, I could breathe. It was like I had lived underwater my whole life. And all of a sudden, sharing this one thing, I could breathe oxygen. And since that time, I understand what I've always been seeking. And that's what I mean, where love is present, where there's no judgment. Just say it, as ugly as it is. Just bring who you are, the authentic, ugly, beautiful, whatever it is. Just bring yourself. Truth will naturally come forth because we have to get the truth out. It has to come out. But when we feel judgment, we want to protect ourselves, so we don't. And once that truth came out of me, my truth, my experience, I grabbed the knife to kill my dad when I was 17 years old, when he was going at my mom, and I broke my heart in that moment. I started bawling my eyes out. I dropped the kitchen knife. I'm doing the dishes while chaos is happening and putting the dishes away. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I want to kill you. I want to kill you. And he's like, oh. And he walks away and he doesn't say anything to me. And my mom's crying. My brother's crying. I'm crying. And again, guess what? The next day, just went to school like it was a normal day.
Right.
Every day of my life was just go to school the next day, normal day. And I'll wrap this because I don't want to make this much longer.
Well,
Go for it, brother. Interject.
I'm wondering what
Save me
is
from this
so
long
good.
storyline.
It's captivating. Look, this is the thing. It's the No Boring Stories podcast, and you, by all means, are anything but a boring storyteller, and you have a captivating story to tell. So I've been sitting here captivated. I'm wondering, when you say the one thing that came out of my mouth, is that something that you're open to sharing what that was?
Yeah.
Like, is that a I admitted something, or was that a saying like I am loved? Like,
No, I admitted something.
okay.
So
What you only need to say that if it's relevant to the thing. I'm just wondering if that was something that is, you know what I mean? Like, was it like an affirmation, or was it
no, it was not
an
affirmation. It
admittance?
was
Yeah.
when I grabbed that knife, I've lived with that for so long. Like, what did that mean? Am I a killer? Am I a bad person? Am I evil?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I started talking about the abuse after the flashbacks, the network that I grew up unaware of that my family was involved in started coming after us. Started getting tailed, started get our phones were tapped. I had an employee get paid to log into my iMessage as me to message my mom who had gone into hiding to come out of hiding. Like the craziest stuff, bro. And this is what I mean. Like someday it's not safe for me to tell the whole thing, but it's a crazy story. It's a real story and it's a crazy story. And so just to give you context, like we were hunted down. It was scary and it was terrifying. And I thought that I was going to die. And I always thought he was going to kill me. And so what I uttered, the guy in the training is like, let it out. Go back in that most painful memory. And I'm there and he's describe yourself. And I'm like, I have no clothes on. Are you facing him or not facing him? I'm not facing him, turn around. And I like shaking, like, look at him and I look at him and my eyes are closed, but I'm like picturing him and it's like, what do you want to say? And I'm like, I had never yelled ever. I've been like this, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", 240. Like I'm not small. And yet I've played this like small, like timid soul, like night, like, oh, again. And all of a sudden this like, this volcano erupted out of me. And I'm like, and I thought I was done. There's 75 people in the room with me and plus these trainers. And I thought I was done. Everyone's listening. I'm like, shit. And he goes, what else do you want to say? This, I knew right away. And I said, I wish I killed you. I mean, I was like, I wish I killed you. Now, do I wish I killed my father? No, that's a horrible thing. And there was so much pain and trauma and self-hatred and destruction and a wake of confusion, trauma and like in me, that little boy wanted to stop all this stuff. And I don't mind sharing this now because I shared this with my mom after all the stuff and it got back to my dad. I was like, what kind of evil person wants to kill their father? Again, like trying to shame me to everyone. Like, well, the one that got raped and molested and masturbated on all this shit, like that's the one. That's the one, man. So I share this story not to make it too intense. I don't share the story to make it about me. And I don't share the story to demonize or project onto, my dad is a hurting person that was hurt by someone else and he perpetuated the cycle. My mom was a hurting person that was hurt by someone else. She perpetuated the cycle. Hurt people truly do hurt people. And this is what I was saying at the beginning, no one's coming to save us. We all get the opportunity to be the hero of our own story. Some miss that opportunity and some get to take that opportunity. And you're talking about the hero's journey and the story arc of the hero. The hero's journey is fulfilled when we can truly look in the mirror and say the pain stops with me. Nothing, no trauma, no lineage, no generational curse, no trauma bonds, no imprints, no narrative, no doctrine, no dogma. Nothing will pass from me to another. Not to my friends, not to my wife, not to my children, not to anyone. And that is what I'm on a mission truly to help people experience, like, true freedom, that no one looks at me. They can only see themselves and they see themselves as the hero of their own story. And we stop protecting families, stop protecting our parents did the best. Who gives a shit? If we're hurt, we're hurt. You don't tell a child that fell on the knee, well, it wasn't the concrete's fault that tore your knee up, or, it's like, that's irrelevant to the story. I'm bleeding, I'm hurting. Like I need to heal.
Well, and this is the I love it, and to frame it again a little bit differently here, as we kind of as we're landing the plane here, is to see this as, yeah, there's this definition of who I am, and then something gets in the way of me reaching that desired picture that I had, whether you were a 4-year-old or a 14-year-old or 24 or something, and something gets in the way. And I think what you're calling out here is that we can and do so easily blame that thing, then call it concrete, call it a father, call it whatever. And we're like, this is what has held me back in life.
Yes.
And therefore I'm going to, because this is all that I know, I guess I have to keep that going, because who am I otherwise? I don't know who I am, because that identity was left back in childhood and I've never actually discovered it. So it is a terrifying thing to release that blame, that story, that barrier, because it means this born again, holy shit, I'm in front of 75 people yelling that I wish I killed my dad. It's this terrifying moment where you are laid bare, and now we feel like, and now I have to figure this out. But of course it's now I get to figure out who I am with all of this. That is the heroic decision. That is what allows you to stand up. That is why, I'm now realizing in your form, when you booked for the podcast, you wrote your favorite movies are Rocky and Braveheart. Like this, it's the individual stepping up to a bigger call and saying, I'm not going to let the story that has been painted on me continue anymore. I'm going to stand up for something bigger.
That's it.
And for you, coming from shame and showing up in love, you have painted a descriptive, a phenomenal, an engaging, captivating, and most of all, real life story for us of you, this human that has a wildly different experience than I have in this same breath that we share. And for that, my friend, I am incredibly grateful for your time, for your openness, for your honesty, for your vulnerability, for how this story is going to inspire so many more that know that they're trapped in something and they have been living in some story, to break out of that, be their own hero, and spread that love more and more, beginning with themselves. This is good stuff. Woo! Okay, so people are going to want to connect with you, obviously, to throw money at you, buy your stuff, I don't know, hire you. What's the best way to get a conversation started, or just even to say thank you? Where should they find you?
And well, thank you would be sufficient, or nothing at all. I mean, you don't know what else to respond. But I mean,
they better say thank you.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Oh man, but if you want Instagram, I put a lot of content. My majority of content is on Instagram, and then my website, that's a good way to connect with me. And then I host a podcast that I share what I have guests on, and we talk about all sorts of stuff, wild ideas of everything. But then I share my story, like I did a podcast the other day. Does God know you? Most people are so focused on, do I know God? But does God know you? And that's an interesting concept. And it's not a religious, it's not even really spiritual. I don't even know. There's no bucket to it. It's just me sharing my experience. So yeah, website, Instagram.
Excellent. I love it. Well, obviously you're just so easy to talk to, and thank you even for reflecting back and listening well to my unscripted thoughts here. It's what makes this beautiful, and I'm so thankful for what we created here together. So yeah, truly thankful for you.
Thank you, brother.